Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today I'm going to talk about the first two episodes of Missing You, a series on Netflix. I'll be upfront with you, I didn't have any intention of watching this. I only watched it because my girlfriend wanted a break from the darker and more brutal Squid Games. As a 30-year-old male, this series is definitely not aimed at me. I would say that this series is not catered to men in general, which is fine. Not everything should be. I walked into this expecting not to enjoy it, and because of that I may be a little bit overly critical. The story follows Kat Donovan and her journey surrounding the murder of her father over a decade ago and the ghosting of her ex-fiancé. The show will go between the present and the past as the story develops, and the anti-aging is done very well, which makes it easy to see which is in the past and which is in the present. I didn't like the first 5 minutes. It tries to show us in the quickest way possible that Kat is a badass by beating up a large man. Firstly, let me just say that there are many accomplished women that can fight, but the big man also has a big knife, and it's no problem for Kat. I don't think it looked real. The guy went from psychotic rage to slowly slashing her from the side in the exact way that someone gets slashed in their first ever knife self-defense class, which leads her to perfectly execute the block and counter as if she had been training that motion for 30 minutes leading up to that point. It looked very choreographed. I was expecting them to show where her ability to fight came from as the show progresses, but they don't. They show that she does Pilates, so that'll have to do, I guess. But to give them credit, she is built like an athletic female, so if she had an extensive history in martial arts, then it could make it feel a bit more believable. Overall, it feels very rushed, taking place within a matter of minutes, trying to convince us of how amazing she is as quickly as possible. I would ask, what's the rush? I would urge people to compare this scene to the opening of Casino Royale if they want to see the establishment of abilities by the main character at the start of the film. It has more than an hour's less screen time than Missing You, and with the longer 8 minutes introduction, the construction scene, it takes its time to display James Bond's positives and negatives. He's reckless, ruthless, and he has a high athletic and physical standard, but not so high that he doesn't make mistakes and take damage, etc., etc. He is able to show us in a more creative and flowing way. After the first 5 minutes, the character of Kat becomes more likeable. Throughout the first episode, she expresses emotion and is believable as a human. However, as I started warming up to her, she took me out of reality in episode 2 with her attitude. Kat is a police detective in the fictional city and suburbs in the UK, which is filmed and is basically Manchester, but we'll get to that later. In episode 2, a 19-year-old man approaches her and tells her that his mother is missing. He asks if her name is Katie, to which she responds in her snarkiest of attitudes, "It's Detective Inspector Donovan to you." After the 19-year-old then states that his mother calls him every day, but hasn't for the last 2 days, her attitude and behaviour belittles him and that he still calls his mother, or has calls from his mother, at the age of 19. So, as the audience, we're supposed to believe that a successful detective, when faced with a 19-year-old man who she knows nothing about, he could have learning difficulties, anxiety, anything or everything. So could his mother. Reports his mother missing, she enforces a barrier by making him call her by a title, and then belittles him for having his mother call him daily. She doesn't take the report of her being missing seriously at all. The level of unprofessionalism is just not believable. The audience can see that there's something strange about this 19-year-old, but at this point Katie had no reason to suspect him of anything unusual, nor shows any suspicion at this point. The police are supposed to take victim care and management very seriously, and this was the most unrealistic scenario I think I've seen in a victim-police interaction in a long time. What makes this worse is that the character of Katie is close with her mother and her father before he passed away. I can't see any reason why her character would behave in this way. The only thing I could think of was that the writer making a personal attack on young men who are close with their mother. Throughout the first 2 episodes, despite having a full-time career as a police detective, she spends her working day almost exclusively not doing any work, except her own quest to find out more about her father's murder a decade before, despite being told not to. Any small amount of work that she does come across, she seemingly pawns off onto her colleagues, who work late into the evening while Kat seemingly gallivants around. They do, however, make an attempt to combat this by the end of episode 2. So, moving on to the setting, it's set in the UK in a fictional city with a fictional police force. Perhaps they also have fictional training, which would explain Kay's behaviour, but it was filmed in and around Manchester. I don't know why they chose to make it fictional, but it doesn't really add or subtract anything, so fair enough. The only thing I will say is it occasionally feels strange in a way that I can't explain, but that's neither good nor bad. So there's Richard Armitage playing a colleague of Katie, or Kat, or whatever you want to call her. There's not much to say, but it's always nice seeing him in a show. He plays a character well, and so far him and Katie, or Kat, seem to have a believable rapport. Stacey is Kat's best friend. I really want to like the character, but I just don't know much about her yet. All I know is that she's a private investigator, mainly working adultery cases, and that she solves problems. The only real interaction with her so far is when Kat has a problem. She calls up Stacey, and then Stacey does all the work and solves the problem to allow the plot to advance. At the moment, she feels more like a tool used by Kat and less like a character in her own right, but hopefully that changes as the show goes on. Aqua is another one of Kat's close friends. She's transgendered, and I was worried that they would shift the focus of the plot, which is developing about a murder and ghosting, to something to do with the character of Aqua. But to be fair, they play it pretty well and make it seem like a normal friendship, which is exactly what it'd be in real life. But again, there is a similar problem. I don't feel like Aqua has her own character yet. She's there when Kat turns up, asks Kat questions or confirms plot so the audience definitely knows what's happening, and then Kat leaves again. I don't want the story of a murder ghosting to change focus to a side character, but I would still like to see more of this character's personality as the show develops. But it still is only 2 episodes in, so maybe that will change. The scenes in general seem to bounce from one to the next without having enough time to settle. If Kat didn't enter a scene by receiving a call on a mobile, then she'll probably be leaving the scene by it. And one thing I want to say is one part in episode 2 that made me laugh was when a character put something in a large blazing incinerator on 2 occasions. He casually sticks the top half of his body in as he puts something in there. I think we all know from experience that sticking your face close to the oven after opening it can send you backwards, so I have no idea how this man managed to do that. Overall, at this stage, I probably wouldn't recommend anyone watch this series if you are a male, and if your girlfriend asks you to, I'd probably make plans to do something else. However, if you really like mysteries and can stand the relationship drama, it could be something for you to watch. It's not terribly made, but the target audience may not be yourself. At the moment, I'd say it's an average TV series with points of annoyance sprinkled in. However, I don't know yet. It might get better for the last 3 episodes.